Well, if you've been to racing at Attica Raceway Park or Fremont Speedway, he's the iconic voice behind the microphone. We're talking about Brian Liskai, and we're here to discuss his start in PR, as well as announcing for the two aforementioned racetracks, as well as his family's background in the sport of racing and some of the things he just loves about his job. That's coming up next on the Dave's Home Supply Getting Up to Speed podcast after these messages. Dave's Home Supply specializes in cabinets, flooring, and countertops. Visit their website at daveshomesupply.com to look at products, services, financing, and even a free estimate. Are you looking for bookkeeping, payroll, or income tax services? Then check out the folks at For You Simple Bookkeeping. They are a licensed tax preparer throughout the entire United States. For more information, click on the link in the description. Well, joining me on the Dave's Home Supply Getting Up to Speed podcast is the guy when it comes to announcing in Ohio. He's the announcer for both Attica Raceway Park and Fremont Speedway, which he's also the manager of public relations for both venues. Brian Liskai. Brian, it's great to have you here, and I always love talking to other announcers, and I know that this is going to be an enjoyable conversation.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, let's just talk about it. Working at two really well-known racetracks in Ohio definitely keeps you busy, and definitely you get to see some great racing each and every year.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I filled in, you know, when Shane Helms ran Waynesfield, I did announced his shows over there for him. And I have a suspicion I'm probably going to be doing some of the stuff at Millstream Speedway, since Rich and Shelley Farmer are going to help promote that this coming season with the Cogley. So I'll probably be busy with that on certain Sundays as well.
Yeah, I was listening about that and been following that on Dirt Tracker Daily. It's great to always have tracks come back, and Millstream, a venue that I was just tracking a bunch of old Ohio Speed Week and All-Star results, and that was a place that they used to go to at least once a year, definitely during Ohio Speed Week.
Oh yeah, it used to kick off Speed Week when my dad was racing. The first Speed Week in 1983, we went there, and I want to say they had 70 or 80 cars there to kick off Speed Week. So Millstream has a really rich and deep history. My dad got me involved in racing. He raced sprint cars for nearly 30 years, and he was a 1972 sprint car track champion at Millstream. So I have a lot of fond memories of that place. And
it's a pretty big track, right? Half mile?
No, it's just under. Some people list it as 3/8, but the Cogley said they measured it. It's more like a 4/10 of a mile. Yeah.
So
when Earl bought it, he put a wall around the outside of it, and it kind of narrowed the track a little bit. But at one time, it was considered a half mile, I believe.
Yeah.
When it was built, I think it was 5/8 actually.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Well, and so Eldora obviously is probably the biggest track in Ohio, but that would put it as one of the other biggest places.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Well, let's talk about you kind of did a great segue there talking about how you kind of got involved in racing, your dad racing, and then eventually you got into the Well, were you a publicist first and then an announcer, or did you go one or the other first, or did you do both at the same time?
Well, I was in college studying journalism. I was a newspaper editor for just a little over 25 years. And but in 1985, when I started announcing, I was in college, and my dad ran into Gary Kern, who was the promoter at Fremont Speedway, and Gary got to him. We were having a few beers, and they got talking. Gary was the announcer at Fremont until he took over as the promoter. And he said, I need a new announcer. My dad volunteered me without even talking to me about it. And I got a phone call from Gary Kern and sat down and talked with him. And that's how it started in 1985.
You know, that is such a really cool deal, because that's how I got started. My dad volunteered me without me knowing about it and basically said, yep, he's going to do it. And I'm like, Dad, I've never announced before. Like, you know, in my head, I'm like, okay, I wanted to. And, it was just kind of emulating some people. I'd be just at the computer or on the PS2 playing the World of Outlaws sprint car game, and I would just be announcing, like, rolling out, starting first, all that stuff. And apparently I had a captive audience without my knowing about it. So
there you go. Yeah, growing up at a racetrack, it was kind of a no-brainer, I guess, once I got into it a little bit. And I had some really good mentors over at Fremont. Jack Chapin, Jack Piper, Rick Lejeune was a great announcer at Fremont and Attica for many years. So I had a lot of great role models that taught me a lot about what I had to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those deals where announcing is tough for getting gigs, because a track generally only needs one announcer. Lately, the trend has been, dual announcers work great if the combination's correct. But unlike, I'm going racing, the track's like, well, the more the merrier, but we only need one or two announcers. So,
yeah, and it's a lot of people think that announcing at a racetrack is just knowing the names and where they're from and the car numbers, but it's gotten so much more complicated, and I don't mean that complicated in a bad and negative tone.
No.
You got to do your homework. You don't know who's going to show up your racetrack. Thank goodness there's been a big push in the technology part of it. I used to, my notes were index cards, and now everything's on the laptop, and I can scroll down, I can see wins, and I keep track of that. And you can go to websites and find out how many. If a new guy comes into town, what his accomplishments have been for the season. So it's made that job a little easier. But still, I'd like to walk through the pits and talk with people, talk with crew guys, talk with drivers, talk with car owners. You get all kinds of good little nuggets of information that you can share with the fans throughout the night that make it just more than an announcer up there calling the action on a racetrack.
Yeah, because anybody can do that, but a dedicated and to me, and this isn't to, I get it, some people are busy or they're just learning too, but like a professional announcer or one that takes pride in their job covers all aspects as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my good friends, Blake Anderson, I watched him. I met Blake when he was just getting into announcing out at Knoxville. I was doing a gig for a local radio show here, and we broadcast the Knoxville Nationals, and I was on top of the announcing booth at that time and had to go through the announcer's booth and met Blake when he was a very young man. I knew he was going to be a good announcer because he was studying everything. He really is immaculate on his note keeping and finding out all those good little tidbits of information.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. He's definitely somebody that I try and not copy, but emulate in my own distinct way, because at the end of the day, right, we're race fans. Some of us a lot more hardcore than others, but as an announcer, I always think in my mind, okay, try and figure out. Obviously, it's very difficult to find anything about everybody, right? But at the same time, as a fan, I remember sitting in the stands or going on road trips, even to this day with my buddies. Who's that guy? Where is he from? Has he ever won there? Has he ever made a main event at that place? Has he ever did well with the Outlaws? Or, you try and research and get a well-rounded profile of an individual, because that there's people in the stands like, who is this guy? Wait, is that guy's kid? Oh, it's not. That's a coincidence that their name's the same. Or, oh, that guy's crew chief used to be with this guy, kind of thing. So,
absolutely correct.
And it's a lot harder than it's a lot easier said than done, because you can probably attest to this. 97% of the research you do and homework you don't even use, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
Well, I again, after running newspapers, I like to have the print in my hand, and I came up with forms that, when guys come up to draw pill, if they're new there that week or first time of the year, they fill that form out, and it has, what are your highlights? What's your wife's name? What's your kids' names? How old are they? Who's your crew? Who's your sponsors? What's your accomplishments been? And I enter all that on my laptop. So that makes that part easy. It's a little time consuming to enter all that, yes, but it's worth it in the long run if I'm going to do my job the way it should be done.
Well, it's like Like when I was in high school with wrestling practice, the first day or opening day, it can kind of be the hard one because of updating everything. But as long as you just maintain it and you're on top of it, it gets easier.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess that from doing it nearly this coming year will be my 40th year of announcing. You just it doesn't seem like work anymore. It never really did, but it doesn't. It's gotten easier, a lot easier.
Well, and what I really like that you said too is you like to walk the pits and get to know individuals, because there's more times than I think I can count where there's been an event and there's a last minute switch because the guy is running late because he couldn't get off on in time on Friday night, or somebody's sick, or there was a overnight driver switch because, as you well know, this year's been quite extensive for ride changes, but you can't assume anything.
No, you can't. Just because the car rolls in the pit, you can't assume that the driver who was in it the week before is going to be in it this week. It's been crazy the past 4 or 5 years on what's going on this year in particular. The driver changes. It's been stunning. As somebody, I'm almost 60 years old, and I've been in this sport, involved in this sport my whole life. I don't think I've seen a year like this. How crazy, and a lot of shockers. There's been a lot of drivers let go or drivers leaving that really shocked me, and I didn't think that could happen, but it is. And now this off season is, with the whole high limit World of Outlaw thing, it just keeps rolling. That's my only disappointment, I guess, in 6 years being involved in the sport. The amount of political garbage that's become involved, it gets a little depressing.
Yeah, no, it takes kind of the fun out of it. We go to races and we go to these events to get away from the distractions that creep into our everyday lives. And we don't, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, it's like, I try and keep that, when I'm not at the races.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and I can tell you, if it was streamed, I think I watched pretty much every race in Ohio, and like ride changes, like the Rich Farmer 29, there was a lot of different guys in there. The 23s, Zeth Sabo was in it, Cale Thomas, and then the Ceiling 97. It was like, oh, okay, who's going to be in it this week, kind of thing. And I don't say that in a negative way of just like, I'm just trying to keep track of where everybody's moving.
Yeah, and thank goodness we do have some. We're blessed in this state. I've said that my whole life, but with dirt track racing, and we're blessed with some great owners. They don't have. They could go buy a camper or a boat and be happy and content, but they want to stay in this sport, and they spend a lot of money to do it.
Oh, they do, and that's something that like. Growing up in Oregon, there was maybe like 1 or 2 car owners ever, and now there's a little bit more that you're seeing it in Washington, but like California, there's a lot too. Kind of a similar situation
right.
in Ohio where, yeah, exactly. These guys could buy a beach house or move across the country where it's cheaper to live, but they're giving back in a great way.
Absolutely. There's another point you brought up. People in Pennsylvania, Ohio and Pennsylvania right next to each other. People in Pennsylvania can't understand why Ohio doesn't have as many racetracks and as many race teams as Pennsylvania. And it comes down to economics. Pennsylvania is a very mountainous and rural state. Where we're at here in Ohio with Fremont and Attica and up here in northern Ohio, there is so much more vying for the entertainment dollar. We have, Cedar Point. We have the water parks up here. We have Lake Erie and everything that goes around that. And it's a tough chore. It's not for the faint of heart to run a racetrack up in northern part of Ohio or in Ohio, period, because there's just so much things going around the state that vie for that entertainment dollar.
Well, and you guys got a pretty big base of professional teams or collegiate athletes that I'm sure during some parts of the year, like the later part of the year with college football, can have an impact.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've seen that. We've got some really great diehard fans. That's been something in, I would say, the last 20 years that racetracks, not just in Ohio, across the country. Grassroots racing has got to do a better job and has started making steps, and that's bringing younger people back into the sport. I forget when USAC did a big study on this, and it was probably 15, 20 years ago, and they called it the graying of our fan base, because the people that were coming through the turnstiles were getting older and older and older, and we were seeing less younger people getting involved in grassroots racing. And we've got to do a better job of promoting this sport to those younger people and get them involved in this. Is streaming a way of doing that? Could be. I'm still haven't made up my mind on how effective streaming is or how ineffective streaming is at bringing new people into a racetrack. I think it's made some race fans kind of lazy. I know there's older race fans that used to go, to the racetrack every week, and now you know what? I don't feel like going. I'll just sit home and watch it on TV. And we've got to something's got to give on that end of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the generation, the younger generations and stuff, and it was brought up in a conversation with somebody about like, man, what is the thing that we're fighting against the hardest? And this goes for a lot of things, not just racing, with younger generations. And you just pull out your phone right there. There's kids that just want to, just hang out on their phone every single minute of their spare time, like even during class. And it's like, holy smokes, which, 10, 15 years ago, that was not an issue. You were battling against maybe, some other things, but it's an ever-changing deal, and it's super competitive for that dollar.
Well, people don't really have to, and kids in particular don't have to leave their homes with their gaming systems and their huge TVs and their phones. They don't even have to leave.
Yeah.
That's what it's come down to. And I think as a society, and it goes across racing, this is across society, we need to start encouraging that interaction among people, face to face again, and get away from all this stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, realistically, you could work, and this could go for an adult. You could work from home, just correspond through emails or phone calls, order through DoorDash, Walmart delivery, Amazon, everything, and not step outside your house. And I mean, I hate to say this, there are people ever since COVID, for one reason or the other, and I'm not judging them in a bad way, but they just stay home. They stay home 24 hours for months and months on end.
Yeah. So there are a lot of uphill battles. The encouraging part is, though, I am seeing younger kids, and I don't want to say kids, I want to say the 20s and 30-year-olds that are coming back to the racetrack. They might have had a grandpa or grandma that came to the race, brought them to the races when they were little, and they're starting to come back to the racetrack. And that now that they're starting to come back, it's up to us, the racetrack, to put out a product that excites them and wants to get them to come back. And I think we're doing a lot better job of that. And it doesn't have to be all this flashy stuff. Run an efficient program. There's been studies out there what people's attention spans are, and it's dropped tremendously. So, when I was a kid, you go to the racetrack and there'd be, 2 or 3 intermissions.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta run a program, and depending on how many classes you have, you better get your program done within a 3.5 hour window.
Yes. Oh man, that's church right there, because Ben Shelton, I think, did a big column about time management. There's things that happen, right? It's unavoidable.
Right.
Like, reworks need to happen. Sometimes there's weather delays, but just sitting around doing nothing for no reason is not efficient, at least in my book.
No. And like I said, because of attention spans, if you want to get these young people here, you got to get them in and out of there. If you can run a 3-hour program, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. If you can drop the green flag in your first race, say 7 o'clock or 7:30, and you're out of there before 11 o'clock, that's a good night at a racetrack. And I think you can get people to come back to your product. The product on the track's exciting.
Yeah,
you just have to make. Yeah, it does, and you just have to make it efficient so that these people, when they get home, say that was fun, and not, boy, I sat there for a long time and it got a little boring.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned everybody's ability to just not be able to just sit there and do nothing and stuff. And I've noticed this on my end with like press releases and race reports. And I don't know if you have either, but you kind of have to make them shorter and just straight to the point. You can't really have these long, elaborate, miniature novel kind of things, because people's attention span, it doesn't exist. If it takes them more than sometimes 30, 45 seconds to read through something, it's like, nah, I'm not interested. Like, just
exactly
what time do the races start? That's all I want to know. So
exactly. Yep. Yeah, we that instant gratification society.
Sure.
But again, I don't want to sound negative, because I think we've come leaps and bounds, particularly in the last 10 years, on where we were. We had that old model that we followed, and in the last 10 years, we've come leaps and bounds better than what we had been doing, and I'm encouraged about the future because of that.
Well, and yeah, adapting and overcome, it's great, because if you just keep doing the same thing and just kind of praying for a miracle, miracles happen every day, but you also got to be intelligent and smart with the way, society is an ever evolving thing, and you just got to be on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let's get back to you and announcing and everything. Friday nights, Attica Raceway Park, and then Saturday, Fremont Speedway. Just kind of how does a typical kind of weekend, I should say, go for you, as far as generally do you have to put a shift in on Friday and then scurry to ARP, or do you kind of just reserve those couple days off where you're just focusing on working on an event?
No, I work on Fridays. I get off work. I come home. I grab a bite to eat. I change my clothes and pack my computer and stuff up. And I live literally 15, 20 minutes from Attica and 15, 20 minutes from Fremont. So that's a nice deal for me. But, get to the racetrack, get set up. At Attica, I go down and help do the pill draw because it is a Friday. And that's a challenge for a racetrack. I don't think anybody considers the people that work at the racetrack have jobs too. So getting there, that's why the gates don't open at Attica until 5 o'clock, and you don't go racing until 7:45, because they understand people have to work. But I get there, I'm able to get off work a little early on Fridays, and I can get there and help to do the pill draw. We got a great staff over there, and after the races, I come home, I write up my press release, I send that out, get some sleep, and Saturday, get ready and go to Fremont and do it all over again. And then I work in the summertime. I work on Sundays, so I get up bright and early Sunday morning and go to work.
Nice. Well, yeah, I was looking on the map. Bellevue is pretty much smack dab in between both of them. Attica is just directly south, and then Fremont to the west. But you're originally from Gibsonburg, which is on the west side of Fremont.
Correct. Grew up at a great time in Gibsonburg in the 70s. There was a lot of race cars over in that area. My dad, of course, and his two brothers raced sprint cars. You had Bill Sickenese, Johnny Bieber, not too far away. The Miller brothers were racing. There was a lot of race cars over there. And it's good. There's still quite a few over there. Stuart Brubaker lives around that area, farms around there. You got the Dussells not too far from Gibsonburg. And there's still a lot of racing family over in that way.
Yeah, no, that's super cool that it's continuing and everything. And then Bellevue, and I may this may be incorrect. Cap Henry's from that area, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He grew up about 3 streets over from me here. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and just watching, I was able to watch Attica every single night they were on Dirt Vision, or if it just so happened to be an all-star race on Flow, and that track is just amazing. I just got to say, and it was so fun. I mean, the Speed Week race, the Speed Week opener was insane.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt so bad. Well, that was the one with Jordan Ryan, right? Beat at the line.
Correct.
Oh, that was a heartbreaker.
Yep. He's going to get his all-star win. It might come this year. It's going to happen eventually. He's too good a racer not to get that done.
But, Ohio to me, growing up, seems so far away, like on a different continent, but yet as I've gotten around and got to meet people in the racing industry and really streaming too, we're talking about positives of streaming for somebody like me who's on the West Coast. Friday night I'm watching Attica or Williams Grove, or I'll watch them all, but I think it's great exposure because Ohio, at least that part where you live, is sort of been a pipeline for a lot of West Coast drivers to kind of come in and go through before the next step, or maybe they come back home, but it's been a good stepping point for several drivers in their young careers.
Well, you look at Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and Iowa has Knoxville, of course, but if you just look at the three states here and the amount of racetracks that are encompassed in those three states, this is the center of grassroots racing. Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, as far as I'm concerned. California, yes, they've got a lot of tracks out there, and recently they've gotten a lot of very talented drivers. But where do those drivers come to? They come out here. A lot of them live in the Indianapolis area. A lot of them have gotten rides out in this area. I always say put a dot in Columbus, Ohio, and go out 8 hours from Columbus, and how many racetracks and race teams there are located in that 8 hours. It's phenomenal.
Well, usually every Monday or Tuesday, I'll go through the country and see what all racetracks ran. In Ohio, just this is a great thing, but it always boggles my mind of Attica, Fremont, Friday, Saturday. There might have been a show at Atomic. Maybe there was a Ohio Valley Sprint Car Association event in the southern part of the state. Sharon might have ran on Wednesday, and it's like, goodness me, there's a lot. There's a lot going on sometimes when it's in full swing.
There's been Saturday nights. I know last year, I think there was 2 or 3 of them when there was, 4 or 5 racetracks running sprint cars on a Saturday night, and all of them had in the 20s car count. I mean, you were looking at over nearly 100 410 sprint cars racing in one night in the state of Ohio, and on tracks that were within 3 hours of each other.
Yeah, and then you got Wayne County in there to throw in too, also. Yep. And sometimes the Fast Series would have something somewhere else. It's just mind-boggling, but in a good way, that there's health there, because easily it could be you could have 4 races with 10 cars each, but as you said, that's not the case.
Well, I think part of that, and I go back to some guys who put this deal together in 1988, the 305 Sprint Division, Eric Phillips and Mark Keegan and that group and Joey Keegan that put the 305 division at Attica in 1988, and how that has grown. I think we probably average close to 30 305 cars every Friday and Saturday night between Attica and Fremont, and those guys have, there's guys that have moved into the 410s. Last year, we saw 3 or 4 of them go to 360 racing. It's that division has done what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I've noticed is some of the drivers that was it Jamie Myers, I think, was one of the drivers that came out of there, and then I think there was a couple of guys that went back to 305. A lot of people would say go down, but I just it's just a different type of sprint car racing, and I would more refer to that they went back.
Well, yeah, it's older guys that wanted to stay involved in sprint car racing, but didn't have the money or the finances or the backing to go 410 racing, and they went back, sort of say, I don't want to say take a step back. They just went back to the roots. They went back to 305 racing. The people like John Ivey and Bobby Clark and Alvin Rupke and those guys, and they're still having fun. They're guys in their late 50s, early 60s, still being able to go race a sprint car and have fun. And what's wrong with that? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And these young kids get to watch these guys and learn from them, and it's a benefit all the way around.
Well, I was just trying to think off the top of my head some of the West Coast Connection guys, at least in the last few years. Obviously, the Macedo brothers, very well distinguished drivers that inhabited those racetracks. DJ Neto had a stint out there too in the 3G team. Obviously, Buddy Kofoid has been another product, and JJ Hickel, currently, and Skylar G. I mean, technically, Alberta's not West Coast, but it's closer to the West Coast than Manitoba or Saskatchewan. But he spent a lot of time racing in California, Oregon, Washington, and Montana.
Well, let's also Kyle Larson, when he was a young teenager, came to Ohio and ran Ohio Sprint Speedway. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., same thing, came to Ohio, ran Ohio Sprint Speedway, made a name for themselves, got their name out there and got them noticed. because they were racing around this neck of the woods and got wins. And, I can remember I was calling the All-Star race at Wayne County Speedway during Speed Week, and I can't remember the year it was. The years tend to blend, but
Sure.
Kyle Larson was young. He had just gotten out this way to race, and he passed Dale Blaney for the lead going into turn 3, and it was a rough racetrack, about middle up. It had a lot of character, and he had all 4 wheels off the ground. He drove to the outside of Dale Blaney, and almost looked like he shocked Dale Blaney. Didn't think anybody would go out there. And I turned to Mike Swanger, who was the announcer at Wayne County Speedway at the time. And again, I'm showing my age, but I grew up and got to watch Jan Opperman, who I thought was one of the most purest sprint car racers I had ever seen in my life. And I turned to Mike and I said that this kid here, that shows a lot of Jan Opperman in him. And nobody really knew who Kyle Larson was at that point in time. And boy, from then on, everybody paid attention to Kyle Larson. Now look where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, he had that stretch from I would say 2010 to 2013 where it was just wait, he did that again. He won Gold Cup. He won Speed Week Northwest. He won a NARC championship, and then the 4 Crown Nationals. That was pretty impressive. First time at Eldora, and then Ohio Speed Week, among other things. Yeah.
So it has been a pretty cool breeding ground to get guys out here. You see a lot of the California guys come out here and they go USAC racing in Indiana. So again, there's that connection. They leave their homes in California and come here to race. You go back to the 70s. There was the group from Florida that came to Pennsylvania, Bobby Allen and Steve Smith and Jan Opperman. They came from Florida to come up here because they could race up here. You couldn't do that down in Florida. So again, people that live here, I think, don't tend to look at it this way. But if they took a step back and looked at it and said, we're pretty blessed. But from Indiana to Pennsylvania, we are pretty blessed if you're a dirt track race fan.
Well, and some people that I've gotten to know, kind of through social media and got to interact with a little bit lately and have been a big help to some of the names we mentioned, Mike and Stephanie Linder. It's just and not just of West Coast drivers, but also Darren Nida praising them, Creed Kemenaugh praising them, of just how that family, and I'm not just singling them out because they're the only ones. I know that there's other people out there, but they just seem like just a treasure to have in the state of Ohio.
Oh, absolutely. That comes from Jim Linder, Mike and Stephen Linder's dad, who raced, forever. And Jim and Fred Linder, his brother, so there's that deal again. It just, the generations just keep following with this deal. And it's kind of a neat deal that Fremont Speedway promoter Rich Farmer is going to have a sort of a class on racing, driving, setup, maintenance, and the Linder boys are going to be a big part of that, huge part of that this summer at Fremont Speedway.
Well, that's really cool because I come from a deep IMCA background, and I remember interviewing one of my buddies, and one of the questions was, what is one of the things that you do that people don't know? Are you involved in a charity, or do you do this? And his deal was he likes to help young upcoming racers to dial in setup and just basically learn how to drive. And kind of what the premise was is the reason he does it is because it makes for safer racing. It makes the racing better. Thus, the racing making it better makes it more enjoyable for the fans, more exciting for the fans, and everybody wins because nobody wants to go out on an unsafe racetrack and nobody wants to go and watch a boring race.
Right. Absolutely. And, again, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, we've gotten to an era where if a kid wants to go racing and mommy and daddy have enough money, he's going to go racing, whether he has the experience or the knowledge or even the skill to do it. And we need some of these classroom type settings to see. Maybe it isn't for them. I've seen some young racers, really nice guys, really nice kids. Mom and dad have some money and I might like to try this racing, and they go out and spend a bunch of money. And it took less than a year, and they're like, you know what, I tried it. I'm not real good at it. And because I'm not real good at it, I've lost enthusiasm for it. And I hate that. Mm-hmm. I would rather see them get involved in something else. Try that if you want to drive. And if it doesn't work out, we need to keep those kind of people involved in the sport in some sort of capacity, because they do have a passion for it.
Yes, no doubt. And something really cool that I found out that the Linders do is during the holidays, they get a bunch of local racers and personalities with the Ohio Soldiers Home, which is a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, I've gone over and helped with that deal and called bingo and got yelled at by veterans because I didn't call their letters. But, yeah, it's a really cool deal. And what's really cool is when you get some of the race cars to come over there and you get some of these veterans, you know, they were young when the hot rods were going around, and watch them come out, look at the mechanics of a race car is pretty cool.
Well, and it's really also really neat to kind of give back to some folks that have did a lot for our country, whether they wanted to or not, or whether they want to get recognized or not. But some people that unfortunately, through things that happen, kind of get forgotten about, and you know, nobody really wants to have anything to do with them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it was really cool because the veterans home here near Attica and Fremont brought a bus load them out to the racetrack. They didn't stay very long, but they got to come out and see what it was all about, and that was encouraging too. And you know, that's the other thing our racetracks do around here is that kind of thing. And you know, we've had student nights where we go to all the schools in a particular county and give all the kids, grades K through 12, get a free ticket to come to the racetrack, and that's showing big benefits as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's a capital idea for sure. I remember, I think it was a race at Silver Dollar, and I was just sitting in the pit stands, and I think it was Dave Abreu, Rico's dad, just said something about, you know, you see, you know, no one's in the stands. If I had a racetrack, every kid, you know, I forgot what the age was, they'd get in for free. Because they're going to get something. They're going to buy candy. They're going to buy a hot dog. They're going to buy a hamburger. And, you know, it's able to generate revenue in a different sort of way. But most of all, it's you're gaining a lifelong fan.
Absolutely. Both the racetracks I'm associated with, kids 10 and under get in free every week. So, you know, it's just a neat thing. We give a bicycle away at each racetrack each week. We get sponsors to do that. And it's, you know, again, we've learned a lot in the last 10 years on what we got to do better.
Yes. And that's the great thing that you keep bringing up is that being a situational awareness, right? And not just like, well, it's going to work, or this worked in 1980. It should work now, where you're just kind of rolling with the punches and then figuring out what works and what doesn't work, showing some fluidity there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know it's getting late where you're at in your part of the country, but I did want to ask you, as far as announcing wise, are there any top moments? And I know this is putting you on the spot because this can be a hard one. Any top moments that you remember of just some calls that were just memorable and kind of ingrained in your brain?
The week before every week. The week before every week.
That's a good answer.
If I can't have fun at the racetrack every week, I always say I'm going to do this till it's not fun anymore. Mm-hmm. And believe me, there's nights where everything doesn't go very well and you get frustrated. But yeah, every night that I get to call a race, I'm blessed, and it's the best feeling in the world to be able to do that. But I do remember now that this always sticks in my mind. It was the first year I was announcing. My dad was still racing. It was at Fremont, and he went out to qualify. And he flipped in qualifying, and I didn't get the microphone off, and a choice word came out over the loudspeaker. So that's something that, you know, has stuck with me for 40 years now.
Yeah. Make sure it's clear. Well, and then for a long time, I ended up getting my own microphone. You go to some places when you travel around and it doesn't have an on switch, and they're like, oh, just hit the mute button. Oh, okay. Well, you know, I didn't know that existed until you told me about it. So.
Yeah, things can be said. Yes.
Yeah. Or the headphone mics. I use one only if I got a cough box, but if I don't, it's like, nope, I'm just going with a handheld because something might happen, and it's probably not going to be on my end. It's probably going to be something else. You know, you're going to have somebody angry come in here, and Yeah, we don't need to be, a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Nope, not at all.
Well, it's been
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And one thing also I was going to definitely give you a shout out for is your invocations. I think they're beautifully said and they speak from the heart, and they're very touching. I'll just say that. And it's been something that I've been working on, and it's just one of those moments where, I didn't go to seminary school or I'm not ordained or anything, but like it's just speaking from the heart when it comes to stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Well, thank you. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, we'll definitely be staying in touch. We'll definitely maybe be having you on. Obviously, schedules are going to be the hot topic, and PRI is coming up. But we'll maybe have sort of a season preview for both Attica and Fremont if we can catch up with you before the holidays get in full swing.
Absolutely. Give me a call anytime.
Awesome. Well, it's been great getting to know you, Brian, and I'm really looking forward to future conversations, and I hope the night treats you well.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
This episode is a production of Highside Racing Promotions. Be sure to like the YouTube as well as Facebook page and like these videos. The more likes and the more attention it gets, and we would like to get as much information out to the racing community. Whenever or wherever you're watching these episodes, we hope that you enjoyed them